Zane Veller hadn't meant to meet anyone that night, especially not a woman with suitcase wheels dragging through slush and a stubborn spark in her eyes. "Careful," he said, stepping in front of the curb just as the woman nearly slipped, her boots skidding on black ice. He reached out instinctively, catching her arm. "You okay?" She looked up at him, cheeks flushed from the cold, strands of dark hair stuck to her lipstick. "I'm fine," she said, straightening. "I didn't think it would be this icy in March." Zane glanced at the streetlights flickering above them, then back at her suitcase. "Where you headed?" "Hotel Lennox," she said, exhaling. "It's supposed to be 2 blocks from here, but I think my GPS gave up. That's 15 minutes from here." Walking that slow, he eyed her broken suitcase wheel and then his daughter squirming in the stroller beside him. "You don't know this neighborhood, do you?" She hesitated. "No, first time here." He sighed and shifted the stroller handle. "I'll walk you." "You don't have to. I'm not letting you drag that thing alone in the dark. And my daughter's asleep, so we're not in a rush." Her eyes flicked to the girl bundled in the stroller. "She's adorable." "That's Aaliyah," he said. "She's 4. And heavy." The woman smiled, then held out her hand. "Sierra Oaks, Zane. No last name," he added with a half grin. "Let's go before you break the other wheel." She laughed, and they started walking. The streets were quiet, buildings casting long shadows over cracked sidewalks. Aaliyah dozed in her stroller, her mittened hands loosely hugging a purple stuffed bunny. Zane kept one eye on Sierra and the other on the icy patches ahead. "So what brings a stranger to this part of town?" he asked. "Business," she said. "What kind of business?" She hesitated. "Just meetings." Zane glanced at her. "You're not going to tell me, are you?" "I don't usually tell people everything the moment I meet them." "Fair enough," he said. "I'm an open book, though. Single dad, full-time mechanic, part-time babysitter, barely keeping it together." There was a pause. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Don't be. I wouldn't trade her for anything." He looked down at Aaliyah. "She's the best thing that ever happened to me, but yeah, it's not easy." They reached a street corner and paused. Sierra looked over at him, her eyes more curious now. "Where's her mom?" "She left when Aaliyah was 2, he said, adjusting the stroller. "Didn't sign up for this kind of life, didn't want to stay." Sierra blinked, then said nothing. He looked at her. "You look like someone who doesn't get lost often." "I don't," she admitted. "I travel a lot. I'm used to cities, but sometimes I like to disappear a little." "You're doing a pretty good job of it," she smiled. "What about you?" "Always walking strangers to hotels. I usually reserve this kind of treatment for people who don't almost fall into traffic." She laughed again, and for a moment the air felt easier. When they reached Hotel Lennox, the doorman opened the glass door with a nod. Zane stopped at the entrance, brushing snow off the stroller. Sierra turned to him. "Thank you," she said, shifting her bag. "You didn't have to." "I didn't mind." She looked at him. "Can I buy you a coffee tomorrow?" He blinked. "What? You helped me." "I'd like to return the favor." Zane stared. He hadn't had a woman ask him anything like that in over 3 years. Before he could say no, Aaliyah stirred in the stroller and yawned. Sierra knelt down and waved at her. "Hi, Aaliyah." Aaliyah blinked, sleepy. "Hi," she whispered. Sierra looked up at Zane. "I'll be in the cafe downstairs at 9. If you show up, great. If not, still, thank you." Zane watched her walk through the lobby, her coat catching the lights like silk. She didn't turn around. He didn't know her last name. He didn't know what kind of business she was here for. He didn't even know if she meant it. But he showed up the next morning. She was already there, sitting near the window with 2 cups of coffee. "You came," she said. "You offered caffeine," he replied, pulling out a chair. "It's hard to say no." They talked for an hour, then 2. She asked about Aaliyah. He asked about her travels. She dodged details again, but he let it go. Something about her made him want to listen more than he wanted answers. The next day, she called the hotel and left a message for him with the front desk. Another coffee, another walk. Another easy conversation that didn't feel like it was meant to end. By the 4th day, they were sitting on a bench while Aaliyah built a snow pile nearby. "You're different," Zane said suddenly. Sierra looked at him. "Different how? I don't know." "I've never met someone who listens like you do." She smiled faintly. "You make it easy." He looked away. "You going back soon?" There was a beat. "Tomorrow," he nodded, jaw tight. But then she said, "Would you come see me?" "In New York," Zane stared. "I don't have that kind of life. I can help," she said quickly. I mean, I could arrange something. No, he said gently. I mean, I fix cars, I raise my daughter. You live in a world I can't even picture. Sierra's eyes softened. You don't know what kind of world I live in. No, he said, standing. I don't. She reached for his hand. Zane, wait, but he was already pushing the stroller toward the street. He didn't look back. That night, when Aaliyah was asleep, he sat on the couch staring at the ceiling. It was stupid. He barely knew her. She was just someone passing through, but she'd made him feel seen. He hadn't felt that in years, and he'd walked away. The next morning, he went to the hotel. Her room was empty. She'd checked out. He told himself it was fine. He told himself she was just a traveler. He didn't know she was a CEO. He didn't know she'd stayed an extra 3 days just to see him. He didn't know that she'd stood at the cafe window waiting for him to turn around. He didn't know she was falling in love. 3 weeks passed. Zane had returned to his rhythm, though it barely deserved the word. Mornings were a blur of burnt toast and tangled shoelaces. Afternoons were spent under the hood of whatever battered engine rolled into his shop. Nights belonged to Aaliyah, her sleepy voice asking if stories could have more than one happy ending. He always told her yes. But he hadn't stopped thinking about Sierra. She was unreal in a way that made too much sense. He could still hear the way she said his name soft, like she already knew she'd miss it. He'd tried to convince himself it had been a fluke, a chance encounter, a flicker of something that wasn't meant to last, but the truth had rooted deeper than he expected. He'd let her walk away without asking a single real question, and she hadn't left anything behind. No number. No last name, until a white envelope arrived on the counter of his garage. It wasn't mailed. No postage. Just his name, Zane Veller, written in clean, careful cursive. He stared at it, frowning, hands still marked with engine grease. "Hey," called Owen from the back, wiping his own hands. "What's that?" Zane didn't answer. He opened it. Inside was a single card, heavy, smooth paper, a small logo embossed in silver at the top, just a name, Sierra Oaks. Founder and CEO, Aurelia Group. His stomach dropped. The Aurelia Group wasn't just any company. It was an empire. He'd seen the name on skyscrapers, on magazine covers, on the news when they'd acquired an entire tech firm overnight. Multi-billion-dollar mergers, global holdings, luxury real estate. Fashion, aviation. The name was everywhere, and she was the face of it. He turned the card over. There was a handwritten note in the same elegant script: "If you're ever in New York, come find me. I meant everything I said." Sierra, he stared at it for a long time. That night he didn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table with the card in one hand and his daughter snuggled in her favorite blanket on the couch. He could hear the faint hum of cartoons she'd fallen asleep to, but the only thing in his head was the way Sierra had looked that last day, like she'd wanted to say more, but didn't. He didn't know what she'd meant by everything. He didn't know what she'd expected, but she'd left this door open, and he wasn't sure he had the courage to walk through it. The next morning, he opened the shop as usual, but the card burned in his pocket all day. Every time he reached for a wrench or checked a clipboard, it was there, like it was daring him. "Something on your mind?" Owen asked as they worked beneath a lifted SUV. Zane exhaled. "You ever feel like you missed something you were supposed to chase?" Owen glanced at him. "You get that look in your eye every time you talk about that woman. I barely know her." "Yeah, but you talk about her more than you talk about your ex, and she's your daughter's mother." Zane didn't reply. Owen stepped back. "Go see her." "I can't just leave." "Why not? Aaliyah's in school." "I've got work I can't afford. I'll cover. Take 2 days, take 3, whatever you need. I'll keep the shop open." Zane looked at him, stunned. "You've been the only one holding this place together since Grace left," Owen said. "You deserve something that's about you." He left the next morning. He didn't tell Sierra he was coming. He didn't know where exactly to go, but the card had an address. Midtown Manhattan. He borrowed his cousin's car and drove through the night, stopping only for gas and coffee so strong it made his hands shake. By noon, he was standing in the marble lobby of the Aurelia Group's headquarters, feeling like a pair of worn boots in a room full of polished floors. The receptionist looked up. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Sierra Oaks." She glanced down at her screen. "Do you have an appointment?" "No." A pause. "Your name, sir?" "Zane Veller." She tapped something, then frowned. "One moment." She made a call, spoke in a hushed voice, then nodded. "Someone will escort you up." He rode the elevator in silence, his reflection staring back at him from mirrored walls. He hadn't changed clothes. He hadn't showered. He looked like exactly what he was, a man who lived paycheck to paycheck and had no business being here. But the moment the elevator doors opened, there she was, Sierra, standing in a hallway of glass and light. She didn't speak, not at first. She just looked at him as if she wasn't sure he was real. "You came," she said finally. "I didn't know if you meant it." "I did." She walked toward him, heels silent against the marble. She was dressed in a deep navy suit, her hair swept back, her expression unreadable. She looked powerful, untouchable. He felt like he should leave, but then she reached for his hand. "I was afraid I'd imagined it all," she said quietly. "I didn't know who you were." "I know." He looked past her to the office behind the glass. "This is your world." "Yes, I don't belong in it." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned, leading him into her office. It was massive floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the skyline so vast it felt like a movie set. She closed the door. "You don't have to belong to it," she said. "I just want you in my life." He studied her. "Why? Because you saw me," she said. "Not the company, not the title." "Me?" Zane let out a slow breath. "I thought I'd never see you again." "I left the card because I didn't want that to be true." He reached into his pocket and placed it on her desk. "I've been carrying it for weeks." Their eyes met. Then quietly she said, "I still think about Aaliyah. I don't know if it's too soon to say this, but I'd like to know her. If that's something you'd ever be open to." Zane's jaw tightened. "She's everything to me." "I know," she said. "That's why I'm not asking lightly." He looked out at the skyline. "This feels impossible." "It doesn't have to be. I fix things that are broken," he said. "That's my life. You build things most people can't even dream about. Then maybe we balance each other," she said softly. He turned back to her. "I don't know how to be in your world," he said. "You don't have to be," she whispered. "Just be in mine." And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like running. Zane had never seen a place like it. He stood inside Sierra's penthouse as the sun dipped behind the skyline, casting gold across the sprawling windows. The space was impossibly high, with ceilings that stretched above him like the lobby of some elegant hotel. Everything gleamed polished stone, soft gray furniture, modern art that looked like it cost more than his entire garage. "I didn't bring you here to impress you," Sierra said, slipping out of her heels near the entrance. "I just wanted you to see where I live, not the company, not the building. Me." Zane set Aaliyah's small duffel bag down by the doorway and glanced around. Does anyone actually live in a place like this, or just pose for a photo shoot and leave? You'd be surprised how quiet it can get. He turned to her. "You're not used to guests, are you?" She shook her head. "Not like this." He looked over at Aaliyah, who was wandering toward the wall of glass, her wide eyes fixed on the view. Sierra's gaze followed her. "I had the apartment baby-proofed this morning," she said. "Just in case you came. You didn't know I would." "I hoped." Zane walked over to his daughter, who had pressed her palms to the cool glass. "It's like touching the clouds," she whispered. He knelt beside her. "You like it?" she nodded. "Everything's tiny." Sierra crouched down beside them. "That's Central Park right there, and if you look far enough, you can almost see the river." Aaliyah turned to her. "Do you live in the sky?" Sierra laughed, the sound soft and surprised. "Kind of." Zane watched them, something unfamiliar prickling at the base of his throat. It wasn't discomfort. It wasn't even fear. It was possibility, something he hadn't let himself feel in years. Later, after a quiet dinner, Sierra had ordered from a private chef who arrived and left so discreetly, Aaliyah barely noticed. Zane found himself alone with her on the balcony. The girl had fallen asleep in a guest room that looked like it belonged in a storybook, curled up with her purple bunny and a blanket embroidered with her name, a detail Sierra had somehow arranged without asking. "You didn't have to go that far," he said, nodding toward the glass door behind them. "I wanted her to feel welcome. You barely know her." "I'm trying to." Zane leaned on the railing. "This feels like another planet." "Sometimes it does to me too." He looked out at the city. "I've never left the state, not really. Not unless you count the time I got lost on a highway and ended up in Pennsylvania for 2 hours. Sierra smiled. "You could go anywhere you wanted." "With what? A wrench and a busted-up pickup?" She turned, her voice quiet. "Do you think that's all you are?" Zane didn't answer. Sierra stepped closer. You built a life for your daughter from nothing. You show up for her every day. You didn't let bitterness turn you cold. That's more than most men I've met in this world can say. I'm still not wealthy. That's not what I'm looking for. He looked at her. Then what are you looking for? She hesitated. Someone real, someone who knows how to love without needing permission. The silence between them stretched, full of things neither of them had the nerve to say. Then Zane asked, "What do your investors think about you inviting a mechanic and his daughter into your life?" "I don't care what they think. You should. I've spent years doing what everyone else expected, marrying a venture capitalist. Attending events with people whose names I can't remember, smiling when I wanted to scream. I've earned the right to make one decision for myself." Zane turned to face her. "This isn't simple. I can't just pack up my life and start over in a penthouse. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking for, Sierra? I'm asking you not to walk away this time." He breathed in, air cool and sharp. "I don't know how to fit into your world." "Then let's make a new one." He stared at her, unsure if he wanted to laugh or run. She reached into the pocket of her blazer and pulled out a small box. He raised an eyebrow. "Is that a—" "Relax," she said, opening it. Inside was a single key. "This isn't what you think." Zane looked at it. "What is it?" "A place. Not here, not a penthouse, not even in the city." He frowned. "You bought a place." "I kept a house in Larchwood. It's outside the city. Quiet, normal. I used to go there when I needed to disappear. So it's empty now, but it has a garage, a backyard, a room for Aaliyah. I'm not asking you to move. I'm offering you a space to breathe, to think, to decide." Zane stared at the key. "You barely know me." "I know enough." He looked up. "What if I say no? Then I'll wait until you say yes." He didn't take the key, not yet, but he didn't walk away either. That night, he stayed up in the guest room next to Aaliyah's, watching the lights of the city shift and flicker. He thought about what it meant to be needed. To be wanted not because he fixed things, not because he made himself convenient, but because someone saw value in who he already was. Sierra had a life so far removed from his it felt fictional. But she hadn't tried to change him. She hadn't asked him to become anything else. And that meant more than he could explain. The next morning, Aaliyah ran into the kitchen barefoot, her hair a tangle of sleep. She climbed onto a stool at the marble island where Sierra was pouring coffee. "Can we stay here?" she asked, yawning. Sierra handed her a glass of orange juice. "Do you want to?" Leah nodded. "It smells like pancakes." Zane walked in just in time to hear it. He paused. Sierra looked at him, waiting. He didn't say anything, but he sat down at the counter beside his daughter, and when Sierra slid a plate toward him, he didn't push it away. He didn't touch the key on the counter, still waiting beside the napkin holder, but he didn't tell her to take it back, either. Later that afternoon, he pulled her aside while Aaliyah played with a small wooden puzzle Sierra had found in a closet. "About that house," he said. She looked up expectant. "I'm not saying yes yet," he said carefully, "but I'm not saying no. That's all I needed to hear. I want to know what it means if I take it, if we go there. It means I'll meet you where you are. Wherever that is. And if I can't give you all of this," he gestured to the room around them, "if I'm never comfortable with any of it, then we find something that feels like home," she said. "Even if it's not made of glass." He looked at her, and something lifted in his chest, something that had been locked down since the day Grace left. It wasn't certainty, not yet, but it was hope. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was drowning in someone else's expectations. He felt seen, he felt chosen, and that changed everything. Zane stood in the doorway of the Larchwood house, the key turning smooth and silent in his hand. It was early April now, and a light rain misted the quiet neighborhood, the kind that soaked slowly through your clothes and made the streets smell like damp cedar and fresh pavement. The house Sierra had spoken of wasn't extravagant. It was tucked beneath a canopy of birch trees, with gray shutters and a wraparound porch that looked like it had stories to tell. A gravel drive curved gently toward a detached garage with tall wooden doors. Aaliyah was asleep in the back seat when they arrived. Zane lifted her out carefully, her tiny body warm against his chest, her arms draped across his shoulders like she trusted him to carry the world. Sierra followed closely, unlocking the door ahead of them and stepping inside like it was the first time all over again. Zane laid Aaliyah down on the couch, pulling a knitted throw over her legs. He turned to find Sierra watching him from the hallway, her hair damp from the rain, her eyes unreadable. "You sure about this?" he asked quietly. "I'm sure I don't want you anywhere else." He didn't answer right away. The house smelled faintly of lavender and wood polish, the air cool from being closed up too long. Sierra moved through the space, opening windows, pulling back linen curtains, breathing life back into a place that had been dormant. They spent the next few days settling in. Zane fixed a broken hinge on the back door without being asked. He scrubbed down the garage until the floor gleamed like slate beneath the single overhead light. Aaliyah found a patch of wildflowers behind the house and started bringing them inside, one fistful at a time, arranging them in mason jars with all the seriousness of a florist. Sierra let them make it theirs. She hadn't brought assistants or designers or any of the people who usually followed her through her world. She made pancakes from scratch. She let Aaliyah paint her nails unevenly with glitter polish. She stood beside Zane in the garage while he tuned up the old motorcycle she found under a tarp, handing him tools without needing to be told which ones. It wasn't fast, but it was real. One afternoon, Zane found her in the backyard, barefoot in the grass, her phone vibrating unanswered on the patio table. "You're ignoring work," he said. "I'm prioritizing," she replied. "There's a difference." He leaned against the porch railing. "They're calling about something important, aren't they?" She looked up at him. "A shareholder wants me to fly to Geneva. A board member thinks I've lost my edge, and someone tried to schedule a meeting with the Crown Prince of Qatar without asking me first." Zane raised a brow. "And you're still here," she tucked her hair behind her ear, "because the only meeting I want is this one. You're not afraid they'll replace you. They can try," she said, "but I built it. They don't know how the engine runs." He stepped down and walked toward her. "You always this fearless?" "No," she said, voice softer now. "But I'm learning." That night, after Aaliyah had fallen asleep upstairs with her arms wrapped around a stuffed unicorn Sierra had picked out at a roadside market, Zane stood beside the kitchen sink, rinsing out 2 coffee mugs. Sierra leaned on the counter behind him. "You haven't said what you want yet." He dried his hands. "I think I want to stop running on fumes." She tilted her head. "What does that mean?" "It means I've been surviving for years, not living, not choosing. Just holding things together. And now," he turned to her, "now I want to see what happens if I stop holding everything back." Sierra's breath caught, but she didn't speak. Zane reached into his pocket and placed the key she'd given him on the counter. "I'm staying," he said. "If you want me here." She reached for the key, her hand brushing his. "I never stopped wanting that." He kissed her for the first time that night. It wasn't rushed or hesitant. It wasn't the kind of kiss that asked for permission or offered apologies. It was certain, grounded. Like everything between them had been waiting for this exact moment to breathe, and the next morning, everything shifted. They didn't announce anything. They didn't sit down and label what they were, but the way they moved around each other changed. Zane started waking up before sunrise to make coffee before Sierra's morning calls. Sierra started reading bedtime stories with Aaliyah, her voice steady even when the girl interrupted every page to ask questions. Zane took a job at a local auto shop in town, nothing fancy, just honest work a few days a week. He came home with grease on his hands and a crooked smile that didn't fade. Sierra split her time between Larchwood and the city, but never stayed away for more than 2 nights, always returning with something small for Aaliyah and something quiet for Zane, his favorite licorice, a battered book of poetry, or a new socket wrench set that made him shake his head and mumble about how she'd overpaid. She never argued. She just kissed him and said, "You're worth it." One evening in early May, as the sun poured amber light across the porch, Aaliyah sat between them on the steps, swinging her legs and holding a popsicle in each hand. "Are we a family now?" she asked, sticky and matter-of-fact. Zane looked at Sierra. Sierra smiled. "Do you think we are?" Aaliyah nodded. "You don't go away like the other grown-ups." Zane wrapped an arm around her. "We're not going anywhere." Sierra leaned into his shoulder. "Not unless you want to take a trip." He glanced at her. "A trip?" She pulled a folded envelope from her pocket and handed it to him. Inside were 3 plane tickets. "Paris?" he asked. Leah's never seen the Eiffel Tower, Sierra said, and I thought maybe you'd want to kiss me at the top of it. Zane laughed. That's a bold suggestion. I'm a bold woman. He looked down at the tickets, then at the two girls beside him, one with raspberry-stained fingers and the other with eyes that never looked away when it mattered. Yeah, he said. Let's go see the damn tower. They left 2 weeks later. Paris was loud and alive, with street music and pastry shops and winding alleys that smelled like roasted chestnuts. Aaliyah fed pigeons in front of Notre Dame. Zane and Sierra got lost in the Marais and didn't care. On their last night there, Sierra pulled him onto a rooftop overlooking the Seine, the lights of the city flickering below them like stars that had lost their way. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out something small. Zane froze. If that's another key, it's not, she said, opening the velvet box. Inside was a narrow silver ring etched with tiny constellations. She didn't kneel. She didn't make a speech. She just looked at him with that same look she'd given him the night he walked her to the hotel, like she already knew the answer. I don't want a wedding with cameras or press releases, she said. I just want you, and Aaliyah, and this life. Zane took the ring and slid it onto his finger. You already have us. Back in Larchwood, they got married in the backyard under a white tent strung with fairy lights. There were fewer than 20 people. Aaliyah wore a flower crown. Zane wore a suit that didn't quite fit but still looked right. Sierra walked barefoot down the grass toward him, and when they kissed, it didn't feel like a beginning or an ending. It felt like everything in between had finally found its place. No headlines, no shareholders, no more waiting. Just one struggling dad who walked a traveler to her hotel and found the rest of his life waiting at the door. Rain tapped gently against the windows of the Larchwood house, the sky outside a pale gray that made the warm light inside feel golden. It had been 6 months since Paris, and the rhythm of their life had settled into something steady, something real. Zane stood in the garage, wiping his hands with a rag as he leaned over the engine of a vintage roadster. The car had been a surprise from Sierra, a restoration project she'd found abandoned in a barn outside of Terrytown. Thought you might enjoy fixing something that doesn't have a deadline, she had said, handing him the keys with a quiet smile. He had spent the past few weeks bringing it back to life, piece by piece. There was something grounding about it, something that reminded him of who he was before everything had shifted. But this time, it wasn't about escaping. It was about building, with her, with Aaliyah, with himself. Sierra appeared in the doorway, holding a steaming mug in each hand, her dark green sweater slipping slightly off one shoulder. Her hair was tied up, not for fashion but practicality, and her feet were bare on the concrete floor. I figured you wouldn't come inside unless someone pried you out, she said, handing him one of the mugs. Zane took it, letting the warmth seep into his fingers. You're not wrong, she glanced at the open hood. Is it talking back yet? It grumbled this morning. Might say hello by the weekend. She leaned against the wall. You know, when I bought that thing, I thought it would drive you crazy. You've proven me wrong. I like a challenge, he said, especially when it doesn't scream or throw crayons across the living room. Sierra laughed. She only did that once. She did it twice. The second time you bribed her with chocolate and pretended it didn't happen. I was outnumbered, she said, sipping her drink. She had glitter on her side. Zane shook his head, smiling as he set the mug down on the workbench. You ever think about how different this all is from where we started? Every day, he turned to her. Do you miss it? The city, the pace, the spotlight? Sometimes, she admitted. But not in the way I thought I would. I don't miss the noise. I don't miss pretending. I miss my office view, maybe. But this view, she pointed toward the wide garage door where the trees swayed just beyond the drive, feels like something I chose, not something I inherited. Zane stepped closer, reaching out to tuck her hair behind her ear. You didn't inherit anything. You built it. I built something, but I never built a life, not like this. He touched her chin gently. You built this too, Sierra, don't forget that. She looked at him, eyes soft. You make it easy. He kissed her slowly, the kind of kiss that didn't ask anything, didn't need to prove anything. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. I talked to the board this morning, she said. Zane raised an eyebrow. That why you were up before me? They offered me a transition plan. I've been phasing out of the day-to-day quietly, but now it's official. I'm stepping down as CEO, he paused. Are you sure? I've been sure for a while. I just needed to be ready to say it out loud. What happens now? I'll join the board as a strategic advisor. They'll keep my seat. I'll still be involved, but I won't be living out of suitcases or juggling midnight calls with Singapore. Zane studied her. You did all of that without telling me. I wanted it to be my decision, not something I did because I fell in love. He brushed his thumb over her cheek. But you did fall in love. I did, she said, and I'd do it again. Every time. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close, quiet for a long moment. Then he whispered, I think you're the bravest person I've ever met. She smiled against his chest. You married me. That makes you reckless. They laughed softly, swaying in the quiet hum of the garage, the world outside muffled by rain and time. That evening, as the storm passed and the clouds pulled apart, they sat on the porch swing while Aaliyah chased bubbles through the damp grass, her laughter rising into the air like music. Zane stretched his legs, watching her. She's happier here than I thought she'd be. She told me last week she wants to plant a sunflower garden. You think we can keep anything alive that doesn't scream when hungry? Sierra nudged him. We'll learn. He looked over at her. You ever think about having another? Her eyes widened slightly. Another what, baby? She blinked. Zane, I'm not saying now, I'm just asking. Do you want that? She looked out at Aaliyah. The little girl was twirling now, arms wide, the last of the bubbles drifting around her. Sierra's expression softened. I didn't think I was the kind of woman who could do this, she said, but I've never felt stronger than I do when she hugs me goodnight. Zane reached for her hand. So Sierra turned to him, her voice steady. Yes, I want that. With you. He kissed her then, right there on the porch as the sun broke through the clouds and painted the world gold. A year later, the sunflower garden bloomed. It wasn't perfect, some stalks grew sideways, and Aaliyah insisted on painting rocks with faces to keep the flower monsters away, but it was theirs. Zane expanded the garage, taking on more restoration work from private collectors. Sierra started mentoring young female entrepreneurs through a foundation she quietly funded, never putting her name on the building. Their second child, a boy named Corin, arrived on a crisp October morning. He had Sierra's dark eyes and Zane's stubborn scowl, and Aaliyah declared herself his boss before he'd even opened both eyes. They didn't live in the sky or in boardrooms or beneath fluorescent lights anymore. They lived in sunrooms and backyards and muddy boots. They lived in weekend pancakes and impromptu picnics and bedtime stories that always turned into cuddle piles. They lived in the quiet certainty that love, when chosen again and again, becomes a kind of home no storm can shake. One evening, long after the kids had gone to sleep, Zane stood out on the porch, watching the stars flicker above the treetops. Sierra came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Thinking again, she asked. Always, about, how lucky I am you got lost that night. She rested her chin on his shoulder. I wasn't lost, I was looking for something, I just didn't know what. He turned in her arms. And now I look at you and I see everything I didn't know I needed. He kissed her forehead. We're not perfect. No, she whispered. We're better. We're real. They stood there in the quiet, their world humming around them, chaotic and loud and full of toys they tripped over and late-night laundry loads and scraped knees and sticky kisses. And they wouldn't have traded a single second of it, because fairy tales didn't always come wrapped in glass slippers or penthouse views. Sometimes they came with a broken suitcase, a shared cup of coffee, and a man who showed up when it counted, and stayed.